Hello, dear beloveds. Well, I am coming to you on this glorious Friday afternoon from Melbourne in Australia to talk about one of my favourite things to talk about and really to dive deep into something I've been speaking about in my group today, on spiritual fierceness and what it is to have a deep faith and to do the deep work of a deep faith, a devotion that is not performative and isn't about trying to earn credit with the people in your life or to get approval from others or even some kind of imaginary scorecard with God. And I want to talk about the idea of the responsibility that we have on this spiritual path. If we have turned up to our spirituality, if we're feeling a yearning and a call to deepen into the truth of what we are, that there comes with that a responsibility. And that responsibility is not something that we can shirk off, and nor would we or should we want to, because really this is the entire purpose of our awakening. So I'm going to break that down a little bit and explain exactly what I am talking about here. When we begin to awaken, we are at the same time automatically connecting to our leadership archetype. And why is that? Because when we awaken and we go on that journey of meeting ourselves as infinite consciousness and we start to remember what we truly are, we don't just do that for ourselves alone. We do that on behalf of all. Now, there's a very good reason why that is the case, and that is because the law states, the first immutable hermetic law states that all is one. Effectively, there's only one of us here. There is only one consciousness. And when we begin to truly understand that unity consciousness, that unified field of which we are all a part, everything begins to change for us. And we recognize that our actions are never in isolation. Before we awoke, our actions were never in isolation. But now that we have begun that awakening journey, or we're going on that journey, we begin to sense the vital and great privileged responsibility that we have to do this work, because we're doing it on behalf of all. You know, the great sense of urgency that there is at this time in the world means that if we're awakening, our job is not to be doing it for ourselves alone, and not to think that it's just about attaining more of the facets of the dream. And what I mean by that is that, if we think of Earth School as a dream, this place where we've come to train our consciousness, to train it back to the truth of what we are, which is that we are God, or infinite and unlimited. We are not here actually just to use our spiritual powers that we're learning as we awaken, to attain a bigger TV and a nicer car and a bigger house and a boyfriend and all of these things. It's really about the sense of urgency to contribute something greater to the good of all. And that is why spiritual awakening comes with this divine responsibility to not only bequeath what we are learning to others, and therefore we are naturally becoming a leader, but also because we are inevitably, all of our choices are impacting the whole. There is only one of us here. There is only one consciousness. All is one. All is of the one mind. And so we must be willing to take that responsibility and not to sit back in our comfort zone, hoping that we can kind of awaken without anyone noticing, or that our awakening can be just about us getting more of what our ego desires versus what we're truly doing with our awakening, which is to create that greater good. And that's what leads me to this really key point of what I want to share with you today, which is the idea that we are not here to talk in pseudo-spiritual language, to talk in the language of the wellness industry, to talk about, diet and exercise and green smoothies as though that is spiritual awakening, because it's not. Those ideas may have been co-opted by people who want to be palatable to the masses and want to kind of make their offers or their service or their business, easily consumed by everybody. But to be a true spiritual leader is to be a revolutionary, and to be unafraid to come out of that spiritual closet and to stop thinking that you can do your awakening journey in private. Now, the paradox here is that your awakening journey is one of solitude. You actually can't take anyone with you. It is all about your personal contributions when no one is looking. How is your devotion when no one's looking? Or is it just this performative devotion which shows up when Instagram, you're taking a photo for Instagram, or you want someone to notice how spiritual you are? You know, the quality of your devotion can be measured by what you do when no one is looking. So this is the paradox, but what I'm, the other side of what I'm saying is that you need to come out of your spiritual closet, and you have to stop pretending that you're doing something other than what you're doing, especially if you're building your business on these spiritual principles and on your spiritual awakening. Please don't sit back from that. Please don't hide that truth. Please don't pretend that you are not a spiritual leader, and please own the responsibility you have to be a spiritual revolutionary. It is vital that those of us who can lead must, because the world is at a critical juncture. And it's inevitable that if you are called to this path of awakening at this time, that you are meant to be here. You are meant to be doing this work in service to the greater good. And it would be, easy to kind of create a very beige way of talking about what you do, or finding a really palatable and easy way to have conversations about big spiritual ideas to make sure everybody's approving of you and nobody withdraws their approval from you. But what if your work and your purpose is bigger than that? And I'm talking specifically to the men and women who are in the space of spiritual leadership through their entrepreneurship, through their services, through the work they do in the world for, in exchange for money, that if you find yourself with that tendency to kind of hide what you do because it's easier than owning what you do, because of that fear that there may be this rejection of you, then now is the time to put down those limits and to really step up into the truth that spiritual awakening is a radical act. It is a radical act in and of itself. And you are spiritually radical just by making the choice to awaken, when the majority of the planet don't even know what the awakening is. So you are already a radical. You are already a revolutionary. You're already separate from the mass conscious mind. So please don't then go and look for a way to hide back in and talk about what you do in a way that's beige and polite and domesticated and comfortable. To be awakening at this time on earth comes with that great responsibility of accepting that you are a radical, that you are different from everybody else around you, but that is why you are the leader. If you were like everybody else, you would not be a leader. You would just be a sheep, but you're not. So please don't hide the truth. Don't deny what you are. Don't try and find the most palatable, comfortable language for everybody on the planet. You will not please everybody. You are not meant to please everybody. You are not meant to be seeking approval outside of yourself. But you are not here to dumb down or dull down what God has given you the task of doing. So please don't try and make it wellness and pseudo-spiritual and comfortable for everybody, because your job is to agitate people to awaken. As the great Kali Ma says, her work is not about your comfort, it is about your evolution. And it's vital that we are not resisting that truth, that we are not sitting inside of this idea of our safety zone, our comfort zone. And we're looking at the places where we might be holding ourselves back from being the full expression of what we are, which is God consciousness, because we're afraid of what people might think about us. So this is my invitation to you today. If you do work in this space, if you are on the awakening journey, don't deny or hide your message. Don't try and water it down to appeal to the greatest number of people. Be willing to not mediate or edit God, and to let that message pour through you in the way that it was given to you, and through the ecstasy and the bliss of your sense of union with that infinite consciousness. Please don't look for a way to be everything to everyone. Own your radicalness. Own that you are a revolutionary. Own that you are different to 95% of the population, and that is why you are awakening right now, to lead everyone else into that truth. And I feel so strongly that we sit so much in this kind of pseudo spiritual conversation and talking about self-help and wellness as though those are the same things. They're not the same thing. To be a spiritual leader is not to be a wellness teacher. These are not the same ideas. And I just wanted to share that with you today because I feel it's a good reminder for me. It's a good reminder for all of us not to deny what we're being asked to do by God, and to step up into that leadership fearlessly, knowing that it is not about getting approval. It's about getting congruent. And I've been talking about that all week, and I would love for you to really honor the places where you may be denying your full expression of who and what you are, which is a way of being incongruent. You know, in order for us to be able to do this, we really have to have our spiritual self-esteem intact. And what I teach as part of the Initiate program, which I'm taking to Ireland at the end of September, is spiritual self-esteem. We do that through the development of intuition and intuitive intelligence, but you cannot have intuition in a robust and full expression if you do not have spiritual self-esteem. And what I mean by that is, if you have denied that you are God, if you have denied that you are infinite, unlimited consciousness, if you're willing to say, I trust God, it's just me I don't trust myself, then you're breaking the law, because you are God. You and God are one and the same. So that is that low self-esteem, that lack of sense of trust of the self is breaking the law, and it will mean that your intuition cannot be there in its full expression. We have to break our addictions to littleness in order to be able to fully inhabit our intuition, and that's what the Initiate program is doing in this really intensive 2-day kind of boot camp. We're breaking free of the limits of our ego's perception of self, which are there potentially, you know, the ego thinks it's keeping us safe, but we need to find a greater truth, and we need to connect to that greater truth, and it takes spiritual fierceness to do that. To be able to connect to our spiritual self-esteem is the absolute cornerstone of a robust intuition, because how could you possibly connect to the infinite mind if you did not believe you were worthy of that? So my invitation is for you to join me in Ireland if you happen to be in the neighborhood, and even if you don't, you might want to pop on over. I'll share all the details with you, and to really spend as much time as you can looking at those places where you are denying that you are a spiritual leader, you are on this path of awakening, and it is a responsibility, not just a choice, to lead others into that space, because you have started to see what others cannot yet see. Be willing to be that spiritual revolutionary. Don't hide away from the truth of what you are. It is my privilege to serve you. Have a beautiful weekend.